The man smiling in this photo was arrested after hunting down and brutalizing pedophiles, earning him the nickname, the Alaskan Avenger. As a kid, Jason Vukovich was sexually and physically abused by his stepfather Larry until he ran away from home at the age of 16. Larry was charged with the abuse of a minor but never served any jail time, and as the years passed, Jason grew haunted by his stepfather. He reached a breaking point in 2016 when he decided to use his state sex offender registry to track down criminals, break into their homes, and beat them with a hammer. In 2018, Jason was sentenced to 28 years in prison and has since come out apologizing for his actions. He says that vigilantes have no place in society and warns that just because your past was taken from you, you shouldn't ruin the future that you have ahead.
The most scary real stories that shock you. One night, when the whole city was plunged into darkness, a young girl was sitting in her room reading a book. Suddenly she heard a soft knock on the window, but decided that it was the wind did not pay attention. But the knocking began to repeat louder and more often. The girl got up and cautiously approached the window, but what she saw in the midst of total darkness made her numb with horror. A creepy black figure was looking at her from the other side of the window. The girl felt herself fainting when she saw the nightmarish, inhuman outlines of a face peering into the darkness. She rushed to the door, hoping to run out of the room, but it slammed shut and did not open. The girl huddled in the corner of the room, pressed against the wall and looked with horror at the window, behind which there was still a creepy creature. The knocking stopped only with the first rays of the sun, and the girl heard the creature leave. Since then, she has never been alone in the house at night.
In the midst of an intense video game session, John's room shook with a strange noise from downstairs. Alarmed, he silenced the TV and strained to listen, but nothing. Resuming the game, the sound returned even louder. Curiosity and fear set in, and he hurried downstairs to investigate. Opening the basement door, a chilling breeze brushed past him. In the dimly lit basement, he noticed the wide open window, though he distinctly remembered closing it. Unease gripped him, heightened by the sight of the slightly ajar closet door. Heart pounding, he debated whether to confront the unknown within. Summoning bravery, he reached for the doorknob when an eerie crackle echoed from within. Panic surged and he sprinted upstairs with trembling hands. He called 911. Rapidly, the police arrived. They swiftly combed the house, but all of a sudden, a gunshot sounded from the basement. They emerged, leading a disheveled man, his eyes wild, the officer's shaken voice saying. He aimed the gun at them upon opening the closet, narrowly missing his shot. Breathing a sigh of relief, John realized the terrifying truth. That could have been him the man was shooting at.
You will not believe this insane plot twist. In 2008, Carolyn Watson and Julian Butchwald were a young religious couple. They were living in Melbourne, Australia, and had been together around 2 years. Julian was driving the pair to a picnic date in the car, but he actually stopped the car suddenly, noticing an animal on the side of the road. Suddenly, something horrific happened. Carolyn's vision went completely black after being blindfolded by a terrifying masked man. All she could work out was she was being stripped off and thrown into a vehicle. The car finally stopped and she took her blindfold off, and she was really relieved to see that her boyfriend was by her side. He'd also been stripped off and the couple were completely in the middle of nowhere. The pair managed to untie themselves, but were having to just wander around aimlessly for a week, trying to find safety. Meanwhile, police were desperately searching for the couple. Family and friends were really concerned, and they knew how out of character this was for the pair to go missing. They sent out air and water search teams, but just couldn't locate the couple. As the missing pair were very religious, they'd actually vowed to be celibate until marriage, but Julian started to suggest that it might be a good idea to break this celibacy in order to keep them warm. Finally, a local farmer found the couple and alerted police. However, they quickly found that the story didn't really add up. Julian soon confessed to police that he'd actually made the whole thing up and he'd staged the kidnapping. His motive was purely to try and get his girlfriend to break their vow of celibacy.
At age 18, Michelle Martingo was the all-American sweetheart. 6 days before Christmas, she went to the mall in her hometown of Cedar Rapids in Iowa. And Michelle had parked her car in a dark corner in the car park. She did not really think twice about it and just went in to do her shopping. Now, actually, while she was at the mall, she bumped into her ex-boyfriend named Andy. Now, the pair did exchange pleasantries, Then Michelle just went on with her business. When the mall was about to close, Michelle headed towards her car. She turned on the engine to warm up the car, and when she did that, she didn't lock her doors. At that very moment, someone opened her car and brutally stabbed her 29 times. Now, no money was stolen and she was not SA'd. At about 4 a.m. that evening, her body was discovered. Her family were rightfully devastated, and an investigation into her case was launched. Now, many in the town immediately suspected her ex-boyfriend, Andy. However, Andy's mother had provided him an alibi. She said he had made it back home by the time Michelle was attacked. However, many witnesses still thought he was somewhat involved. At the funeral, he had been acting hysterical, almost getting into the coffin with Michelle. The investigation would continue, and Andy would never be arrested. In fact, he would end up moving away and joining the Navy. And sadly, Michelle's case would go cold. However, in 2005, a detective named Doug Larson, who just so happened to have gone to school with Michelle, decided to reopen the case. And what he uncovered is truly chilling. Uploading part 2 now.
Someone was watching me outside the door. I was sorting out the papers I had to present to my boss at work tomorrow. It was well after midnight. I was about to go to bed when I heard a knock at the front door of my house. I live alone and don't communicate much with my neighbors because I just moved into the neighborhood a week ago. I did not immediately respond to the knock on my door, thinking that it might have been one of the drunken revelers who just happened to be in the wrong house. But when the knock came a second time, seemingly more insistent, I began to get nervous. Who had the sudden urge to drag me out of the house at this hour? I walked slowly toward the front door, trying to control my anxiety. I stopped at the front door, but before I could ask who was standing there, I leaned against the peephole and froze. There was a scary-looking man, if you could call him that, looking right at me on the other side of the door. He had no clothes on, none at all. The creature's skin was pale, and it was impossible to see the eyes on its face. At first I wrote it off to the darkness outside, but then I realized that instead of eyes, the creature had only slits, as if it had been clumsily cut out with scissors by a child. The creature's arms reached almost to the ground, and its legs were unnaturally straight and thin, like sushi sticks. It stared at me with its face almost completely pressed against the peephole of the door. As soon as I came out of my daze, I walked back to the phone on the nightstand, trying not to make a sound. I was going to call 911, but first I wanted to see if I was imagining things. I'd be a complete idiot if no one was at the door when the cops arrived. I slowly made my way back to the door and dialed the numbers on my phone on the way out. When I looked through the peephole, I saw that there was no one at the door. I guess it was time for me to stop leaving work for the late hour. It's a good thing I checked to see if anyone was at the door and didn't just call the police. There's only one problem. I can't take my eyes off the peephole. Because right now someone's breathing down my neck.
These are the most haunted places in the UAE. Coming at number 5. King Faisal Road Hotel in Al Sharjah. I found many articles about this hotel, but none of them exactly mentioned which one it is. On the street that is mentioned, I found 4 hotels, a 2-star, a 3-star, a 4-star, and a 5-star. It could be any one of them. Most of the guests that stay in that hotel are cabin crew staff and pilots from international airlines during their layovers, and all of them have reported disturbing reviews. Number 4, the Jumeirah House. Villa 4 in Jumeirah 1 in Dubai. Every tenant that has rented this villa reported hearing voices of children and doors slamming in the middle of the night. The longest tenant staying in this house only spent 2 years living there. Thankfully, this house was demolished after 2012. Number 3, Al Khail Gate. This place is a compound of apartment buildings. There are several buildings there, however, only one is very haunted. All the residents have reported witnessing a woman, and those who have seen this woman lurking within their halls have all described how she looks like, and all descriptions match. This building still exists, and people do live there. Number 2, Jazirat al-Hamra, also known as Ras Al Khaimah's ghost town. This town has been abandoned since the 60s, and it existed for a very long time before it was abandoned. All you're gonna see while walking through are small abandoned homes, stores, and mosques. And yes, if you disturb the beings living there, especially at night, you will hear things and you will see things. And finally, number 1, Al-Qasimi Palace. I have seen and heard the most terrifying stories inside this palace. A couple of my true horrifying stories series took place inside this palace. This is by far the UAE's most haunted destination. This palace has been abandoned since the 80s, and yes, it is open for visitors and tourists. Make sure you read your prayers before going inside though. You tell me, what country should I do next?
This killer accidentally admitted to his crimes by accident when he forgot he was wearing a microphone while taking part in a documentary. This is how a true crime documentary exposed a killer. In 1971, Robert Durst met Kathleen McCormack and they got married. At the time of her disappearance in 1982, Kathleen had nearly graduated college. She was last seen by a witness at a dinner party where she appeared to be upset. She got a call from Robert and left. Robert admitted to having argued with Kathleen that night, but he said he put her on a train to New York and then never saw her again. Her friend called police to report her missing. Interestingly, Kathleen had been treated at a medical centre for facial bruises weeks prior to this and told the friend that Robert had done it. Robert had actually been dating someone else for some time prior to this and had been living separately to Kathleen. When her family broke into her cottage to try and find out where she was, they found the place had been trashed and her possessions put in the bin. Kathleen's family always believed that Robert was involved in her disappearance. In 2000, Susan Berman, a friend of Robert's, was found murdered. Now, she'd actually provided Robert with an alibi for Kathleen's disappearance. Now, pay really close attention to this next bit. Days after she was killed, a letter addressed to the Beverly Hills Police Department contained Susan's address and the word cadaver on it. On the envelope, Beverly was misspelled. Robert admitted in 2005 that Susan had called him shortly before her death to say that the police wanted to question her about Kathleen going missing. It's believed that Robert killed Susan to keep her quiet. In 2001, Robert's neighbour's body parts were found floating in Galveston Bay. Robert's elderly neighbour, Morris Black, had been killed and Robert was arrested. He was actually released on bail and fled and was found about a month later in Pennsylvania. He was found with $37,000 cash, 2 weapons, and interestingly, Morris Black's driving license. In court, Robert claimed he was acting in self-defense. He said he'd accidentally shot Morris and dismembered his body. Due to lack of forensics, he only got 5 years in jail. This is where things get really crazy. HBO was filming a documentary called The Jinx. During production, Susan's stepson found a letter written by Robert. This contained the same spelling error in the word Beverly as the anonymous letter to police. This implicated Robert in the murder. Now, while filming the documentary, Robert needed the toilet. He forgot that he had a microphone still attached to him. He was recorded talking to himself. He said, "There it is, you're caught. You're right, of course, but you can't imagine. Arrest him." And then he said, "What a disaster. He was right. I was wrong." And finally he said, "I'm having difficulty with the question. What the hell did I do? Killed them all, of course."
This CCTV footage shows this woman's last moments before she was brutally murdered by this man, only moments later. Hi, I'm Meg. I talk about true crime. Let's get into this case. Grace Millane was only 22 and she had just graduated from the University of Lincoln. She was really excited about what was next to come. She had spent years saving up for a backpacking trip, and it was finally time for her to go. First, she went to South America for around 6 weeks. And according to her family, she was bombarding them with updates and pictures. She was a family girl. In November of 2018, she arrived in New Zealand. She was doing the whole solo travel thing, so she was on her own. Over a week later, she made her way to Auckland, where she checked into a hostel. Overall, she seemed to have been having a great time. December 1st, 2018, only a day before her birthday, she leaves the hostel at 6 p.m. to meet up with a guy from Tinder. This Tinder date's name was Jesse and he was 26 years old. You can see them meeting here in the CCTV footage and heading over to a restaurant/bar. Grace was being safe and she was texting her friend during the entire date, telling her that they were really compatible and that was going well. Jesse was apparently living in a hotel at the time, and around 9:30 they decided to head there. And these are Grace's last moments seen alive. The footage that comes after this is insane. December 2nd, aka the next day, was Grace's birthday, so her loved ones from England just started sending her loads of texts. Happy birthday, they were trying to call her. She wasn't responding, which was extremely out of character for her. Now, let me show you what Jesse was doing on the 2nd of December. Here's Jesse leaving the hotel. Here's Jesse up in that corner, buying a suitcase, returning it to the hotel, buying cleaning supplies, and lifting these suitcases back into the elevator and into a rental car that he bought that day. That same day, he even bought carpet cleaner, like a whole machine that cleans carpets, and told the hotel it was because he spilled some red wine on the floor. Safe to say he's looking a bit suspicious. By December 5th, Grace's family had not heard back from her yet. At this point, they had a really bad feeling, and so they called the Auckland police to let them know that she was missing. So they filed the missing persons report, and the Auckland police started digging. The police did an amazing job in this case. Go to part 2 to see what happened next because it's insane.
Photos from history you weren't meant to see. This photo shows what women used to wear in the 1920s. The woman in this photo is wearing what's called a swimming mask, designed to protect against jellyfish stings and sun damage. The entire face would be covered except the eyes, nose, and mouth, and the result is quite disturbing. But this next photo is actually terrifying. This photo might just look like a bench, but it's actually the jail cell used in the real Salem witch trials. People who were accused of witchcraft would spend their final moments here before their execution. Between the years of 1692 and 1693, more than 200 people were accused of being witches. But last up, this might be the most disturbing one of all. This photo might just look like a bunch of scribbles on a page, but there's so much more to the story. This was a letter that a woman named Emmy Hawk wrote to her husband when she was admitted as a schizophrenic patient in a psychiatric hospital. And the letter says, "Darling, please come," over and over again. She later passed away in the year 1920. Follow for more.
This is a true horrifying story, part 76. This story took place in Dubai very recently. There's a group of young Emirati guys that contributed money to rent a villa in a community in Dubai. They pretty much wanted to co-rent a house so they can spend time together on the weekends. So they rented this villa. They were playing games, partying, doing wrong things, bringing girls over, stuff like that. On a normal weekend, one of these guys, named Ahmed, started talking to a local girl recently. After a couple of tries, he finally convinces her to come over. Before she arrived, he tells his friends not to come upstairs as he would be in one of the bedrooms with this girl. When she arrived, he immediately takes her upstairs and locks the bedroom door. In 30 minutes exactly, all the guys downstairs hear drastic screaming coming from upstairs. They see Ahmed running down the stairs, completely naked with no clothes on, scared for his life. They ask him, "What is going on?" He stutters in fear, saying, "Get out of this house, all of you." They thought he was playing some sort of prank until they see the girl run down the stairs, also with no clothes on. She was screaming with a man's voice, telling Ahmed to come back. It wasn't her normal voice. It sounded raspy and very manly. They all run outside, and one of Ahmed's friends takes his pants off and gives it to Ahmed so he can cover up. They start running and knocking on neighbors' doors in panic because calling the police will not help the situation. Maybe because there was something inside the house they didn't want the police to see. There was an Emirati neighbor nearby that allowed them to stay in his home until they figured out a solution. As they explained the story to this neighbor, Ahmed sneaks outside and sees this girl completely dressed up in her clothes, conscious and not knowing what is going on. He yells at her from a distance, saying, "Stay away from me. Don't come any closer. I want nothing to do with you." She cries in pain, not knowing what she did. She asks him, "Why are you standing far from me?" He told her to leave. She cries and begs him to drop her home because she didn't even know where she was. This was a ashiq jinn that possessed this girl, and this jinn did not allow another man to do the dirty with her. If someone wanted to be a hero while these things were happening, something very bad could have happened and lives could have been taken.
What the fuck? Is this thing on?
Top 5 of the scariest videos I found online. I bet you can't make it to the end of the video. The last one is scary. Number 5. 3 friends were playing guitar and singing in their room. You know, just having a good time. When something scary appears in the balcony door window. You could see a white figure appear quickly and disappear once the camera pans back.
Quédale más, la que ponga.
Spicy. Hey, maybe you just like the music. Wanted to do a little dance. Get a little boogie. Get it? Boogie, boo. Please don't unfollow me. Before we get to the next one, can you hit that like button for me? If you get 100,000 hearts, I'll do a part 3. Number 4. A man wakes up to hearing strange noises in his house. When he goes to turn on the lights to see what it is, they seem to not be working. Watch what he sees next. Tired of these ghosts messing with electricity when they do not pay bills. Do you know how much an electric bill is right now? Pay up or get out. Okay, check this out. You're alone in the middle of the night and you're in a hotel when this happens. What's your next move? Let me know down below. Number 3, on the 30th of April, 2022 at 2 a.m., a security camera captured this. Some believe it's a creature dragging a bag, while others believe it's someone walking backwards. A short while after, the security camera catches this. It's the same figure. What do you think this creature is? Number 2, the little girl is in the kitchen alone, and it looks like she's talking to someone. The home security camera captures this. So now they're not paying bills and trying to take our food? This is the last straw. Hello, Ghostbusters. A woman and her child is seeing something in the window, but every time she goes to open it, nothing appears to be there. Watch what happens next. Yeah, it got in the house, and they didn't even realize. Should I do a part 3?
When no one answers the door, officers kick it down and are immediately overwhelmed by the stench of death. It's the decomposing body of a naked man, and next to him is a tripod with a camera on it. And inside the camera is a tape, and scribbled on the side are the 3 words, "The last day." A deputy then sticks it inside a video player and presses play.
My name is Ricardo Lopez. Yesterday I purchased this camera. Do you want to see something funny? I'm gonna show you who I am. I am a monster.
This vlog is just one of 11 videotapes, along with a series of handwritten journals, that document Ricardo's descent into insanity. And soon enough, authorities will be racing against the clock to prevent his evil plan from claiming the life of a famous singer. This is how Ricardo Lopez became the Bjork Stalker. Ricardo was born on January 14th, 1975, into a middle-class family living in Uruguay. He's the youngest of 3 boys, and the family moves to the US and settles down in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And growing up, he's a pretty easygoing kid, but he's kind of shy and introverted, so it's tough for him to make friends at school. His inferiority complex leads him to dropping out of high school when he's just 17 and moving to South Florida to work with his older brother in the pest control business. And when he's not working, trying to make ends meet, he's home alone in his Hollywood apartment. And there he finds that the only way he can escape his bleak, boring life is through celebrity magazines. In 1993, after seeing a music video of an emerging artist named Bjork, he's in awe by the girl's childlike appearance and innocence and instantly becomes obsessed. But instead of art, Ricardo channels his creative energy into a diary about Bjork, which eventually becomes over 800 pages long. It's January 14th, 1996, and Ricardo's reading an article in Entertainment Weekly about the singer's new boyfriend. He's also a musician and fellow entertainer who goes by the nickname Goldie. This relationship, along with the fact that the guy is African American, turns Ricardo's deep affection for Bjork into an intense hatred.
Look at this beautiful face. She's fucking That's unacceptable.
See, in Ricardo's head, he thinks that Bjork is betraying him and wants to teach her a lesson. He starts conjuring up different methods of revenge and makes a plan so he can attack her from a distance and not be the one held responsible. He then has an idea for a sort of book bomb that when she opens it up, the contents will explode on her face, disfiguring or better yet, killing her. He then documents every diabolical step, turning this nightmare of a plan into reality. But he doesn't plan on just killing Bjork. See, a crucial part to all of this is Ricardo taking his own life. On September 12th, 1996, Ricardo is sitting in front of his video camera in his Hollywood apartment. He explains that he has just mailed a package to Bjork at her home in London. Ricardo then arms himself with a weapon and sits as the song I Remember You by Bjork plays in the background. Then, as it gets toward the last part of the song, Ricardo makes one last declaration.
This death is for you, Bjork.
At 2:53 p.m., I Remember You comes to an end, and Ricardo puts a 38 in his mouth, takes one last deep breath, and pulls the trigger. It's 4 days later, on September 16th, 1996, when investigators from the Broward County Sheriff's Department stumble into a crime scene unlike any other. Officers then become alarmed as the contents reveal an explosive device had been created in this very apartment. Though after several hours, they learn the device had been mailed out 4 days earlier to Bjork in London, the last day Ricardo had been seen alive. They immediately contact the Metropolitan Police in the United Kingdom, and amazingly, the package is located and removed from a post office in South London. Reporters all over the globe swarm the artist as she's trying to leave her house.
Well, it's just kind of a very sad thing, obviously when somebody shoots their face off, it's terrible.
You know, guys, in a sick way, he kind of got what he wanted. She knows his name. He hadn't been able to cope with his intense feelings of not being good enough, and an obsession led him down a destructive, fatal path. With social media, influencers and celebrities are more accessible to their fans than ever before. They post their home life, vacation, friends, family members, all of which puts their safety at risk. Rapper PNB Rock was recently shot a few miles away from me after posting on Instagram and tagging the restaurant he was at. Kim Kardashian was bound and gagged after posting on Instagram in Paris. Seriously guys, be careful where you post in real time. I know I do, because if I die, who's gonna make the video about it?